Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the unglamorous but frankly massively lucrative reality of what actually makes frontier AI smart. You might think it's all about endless rows of servers and incredibly complex algorithms, but if we look at the ground truth, there is an entire hidden layer of human infrastructure making these models functional. We're going to pull back the curtain on this multi-billion-dollar market, specifically looking at it through the lens of a company called 2une. They're built inside the Indian edtech giant PhysicsWallah, and they're positioning themselves right at the very center of this whole ecosystem. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. We are going from first principles all the way down to unit economics, covering the human judgment bottleneck, introducing 2une, the market map, building the human network, why quality is the constraint, and finally, the true economics of it all.
Section 1. The human judgment bottleneck.
Let's clear up a massive misconception right out of the gate. The market generally thinks AI is just code and compute. But to understand the reality, we have to look at what happens after an AI essentially reads the entire internet. To actually make a model useful, it relies on something called credentialed preference data. This is literally the atomic unit of the entire industry. See, after pre-training, a model can spit out a dozen different answers to a single question. It has absolutely zero built-in sense of which answer is actually good, safe, or accurate. So it relies entirely on verifiable human experts choosing the best answer and explaining why. If the question is about writing a simple poem, sure, anyone can help. But if it's a complex differential equation or a clinical medical summary, a wrong opinion actively damages the model. The credibility of the judge is literally the product here.
And this brilliantly illustrates the two totally different eras of AI development. Think about it. Pre-training is basically just a massive compute expense to learn the statistical shape of language, just brute force processing. But post-training, that is overwhelmingly driven by human judgment costs to shape those raw, chaotic capabilities into safe, useful outputs. We're going to focus exclusively on this post-training human supply chain today because, honestly, that is where the real structural constraint lies.
Section 2. Introducing 2une. Now that we know what the fundamental bottleneck is, let's look at a fascinating solution entering the market. 2une isn't just selling data. They're essentially manufacturing verified judgment at scale. Look at this number, 50 million. In just 5 years, PhysicsWallah built an edtech platform reaching over 50 million users, and they powered that with a 17,000-person academic delivery workforce. 2une is not some random startup starting from zero. It's the commercial wrapper built directly on top of this massive, pre-existing distribution engine. That is just an unbelievable head start when it comes to supply infrastructure. To really grasp the leverage 2une brings to the table, we have to look at their 3 core pillars. First, they're sitting on over 3 million hours of STEM and education data. They are naturally generating roughly 94,000 structured reasoning chains every single day, purely as a byproduct of their teaching business. Second, they have the physical AI infrastructure, factories, recording studios, 10 million square feet of constructed campuses. That's perfect for training robotics and embodied AI in real physical spaces. And third, they have the ultimate scarce resource, direct access to credentialed people. We're talking JEE or NEET qualified teachers and doctors, all reached through a brand they already know and trust.
Section 3. The market map.
So let's map this out. We need to connect the dots between the immense demand for this data and the actual players fulfilling it. The most important line to look at here is Google DeepMind paired with Deccan AI. Why? Because it proves that a highly concentrated India-based workforce can actually clear the incredibly strict vendor diligence of a frontier lab. You'll also notice Snowflake on here, which proves enterprise buyers are a massive, totally valid target for this. Meanwhile, players like OpenAI and Anthropic, they're deliberately spreading their work across a fragmented field, Scale AI, Surge AI, Mercor, specifically to avoid the kind of single vendor dependency risk they ran into in the past. Now, what's really fascinating about this is the reality of Deccan AI's operations. They are a major competitor, but the raw numbers tell a surprising story. They have this massive registered pool of 1 million contributors. Sounds huge, right? But look at the activation rate. Only 0.5 to 1% in any given month. That means just 5,000 to 10,000 people are actually working. This reveals that the true operating leverage in this market has nothing to do with how many email addresses you have on a mailing list. It's entirely about who actually shows up, passes the strict quality bar, and stays active over time. Deccan's founder, Rakesh Reddy, actually hit the nail on the head regarding why they won that DeepMind contract. They explicitly rejected the classic gig economy instinct, the instinct to just maximize the funnel and source workers globally from 100 different countries. Instead, by concentrating in one country, you drastically tighten your operational control. This completely validates 2une's exact strategic bet, anchoring deep in India through PhysicsWallah's verified networks to guarantee the absolute highest quality. Section 4. Building the human network. So how do you actually turn this into a go-to-market strategy? How does a human network prove its worth and deliver undeniable data to top-tier clients like NVIDIA? Well, the secret here is that you don't build a massive traditional sales team. A competitor named 2une.ai built a $1.2 billion business with almost no sales team at all. How they do it? They published a highly credible benchmark and just let AI researchers naturally cite it in their papers. In this space, a citation in a white paper is literally the warmest sales lead possible. And 2une is perfectly positioned to replicate this playbook by creating an uncontested Indic language STEM benchmark, leveraging their massive educational footprint. When it comes to delivery ops, it is a very precise science. You don't just dump tasks on people. It starts with a calibration batch, scoping a small set against a very specific rubric. Then they calibrate. They measure the agreement between different expert annotators. Only when that's dialed in do they scale up. And crucially, every single judgment produces an auditable provenance lineage file. It tells the buyer exactly who made the judgment and when. In a world that is getting increasingly paranoid about AI just training on synthetic data, proving actual human provenance isn't just a feature, it's a massive competitive moat. Section 5, quality is the constraint. Which brings us to the most critical bottleneck in the entire AI supply chain. The hard part isn't finding people, it's maintaining flawless quality over a long time horizon. We really have to separate two different concepts here. Credential verification is a huge advantage for 2une. Checking a public exam rank like JEE or NEET is basically free, and it's impossible to fake. That gets the right person in the door. But a genuinely qualified genius can still get careless on a Tuesday afternoon, or worse, they can cheat. And that is exactly where continuous quality monitoring comes in. So the crucial point is this: quality naturally degrades as you scale. It's basically a law of physics for human networks. Intrinsic motivation drops, oversight thins out, and the temptation to take shortcuts absolutely skyrockets. Look at this. An EPFL study found that an astonishing 46% of Amazon Mechanical Turk workers were secretly using AI models to do their text labeling work. Think about that. If a lab is paying top dollar for pure human judgment and they get fed AI-generated junk, the whole feedback loop collapses. The industry's answer isn't just more front-door screening. The solution is injecting invisible technical infrastructure, gold test items, directly into the workflow. If a worker fails these hidden tests, the system automatically routes the high-value work away from them. Section 6. The true economics. Finally, let's transition to the financial reality of this space and look at how the money actually flows. I want to be clear, this is not legacy gig work annotation where people are getting paid pennies to draw bounding boxes around stop signs. The market is paying between $60 and $450 an hour for this. Why? Because this is highly specialized expert evaluation. The market places an enormous, almost unbelievable premium on verifiably correct judgment. Because if you get it wrong, the cost of a bad judgment ruining a multi-million-dollar model training run is totally catastrophic. So how does that actually translate into a business model? Well, you've basically got two totally different margin profiles sitting under one roof. The delivery margin, which is managing the humans doing custom ongoing work, operates like a high-end services business. That sits steadily around 30 to 35%. But the licensing margin? That acts exactly like pure software. Licensing PhysicsWallah's existing massive backlog of daily STEM reasoning chains costs almost nothing to duplicate, which means that margin sits at near 100%. It's incredibly powerful. What makes this market so fascinating to study is its fundamental inelasticity. An AI lab isn't going to stop buying expert data just because the hourly rate jumps from $200 to $250. They can't. The alternative of shipping a broken model is just way too expensive. And on the flip side, expert supply is completely fixed in the short run. You can't just magically conjure up 10,000 new NEET cleared doctors out of thin air simply because you raise the pay rate. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. When buyer demand barely flinches at high prices, and the supply of credentialed human experts can't be artificially rushed, who actually controls the future of AI? The answer is becoming incredibly clear. The entire business of frontier AI will be dictated by whoever controls, verifies, and continuously monitors the credentialed human supply that actually exists in the real world today. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. I hope it changed how you look at the real engine powering artificial intelligence.